Nomeshi. I'm a medical doctor from Ghana. I completed my MPA degree at the Harvard THM School of Public Health this past summer. Last year, during my application process, I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Banda Khalifa, who is a friend and a senior colleague. Dr. Banda's knowledge and experience of the graduate application process made it easier to write an outstanding personal statement, also aim for the right test course and finding the right people to write recommendation letters for me. He also gave me a really good insight about the funding landscape available for me for my education. I was able to get admission into most of the top schools that I applied for, including Johns Hopkins, Columbia University, Boston University, and then Harvard University. Yeah, so if you are actually looking to advance your studies and you're looking for a good and friendly coach, I would recommend no other person than Dr. Banda.
Hi everyone, I am Dr. Banda Khalifa, a PhD student at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and an MPH MBA Summer Scholar alum. I've navigated the graduate school application process, gaining admission into institutions like Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and Johns Hopkins. And now I'm here to help you on your journey. Remember, the journey to graduate school may seem tough, but with the right tools and mindset, you'll be on your way to success. Don't forget to check out my other videos for more tips and insights. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing forward. Dr. Banda signing off.
I met Dr. Banda sometime last year. I remember in the United States, and I went online in search of information, and then I came across his LinkedIn profile. I remember I connected profile, and I found really very interesting things where he had shared insights into a lot of the application, a lot of components of the application process. I also eventually got to follow his YouTube account, saw a lot of videos, and I saw that he had a lot of stuff that were quite inspiring. For one, I liked the fact that he had gone through the process. He had really nice admission offers when he was going to move to the United States, and that gave me some sort of assurance that he had gone through it, and I could as well go through the same process that he had gone through using the advice that he had given. It was really helpful. He also organized a couple of live sessions, I remember, where he brought in faculty, people who were in charge of admissions in some of these schools, and that was really very helpful for me. And I followed this process, basically I followed through with everything that he recommended, and I got really good results. At the end of the application cycle, I got admitted into Johns Hopkins University, Harvard, Yale, Emory, and I mean, those were I really didn't apply to much schools because I sort of believed in the processes that he had outlined, and I got admitted into the schools that I applied to, and I got really good scholarship offers too. I eventually chose to come to Hopkins, where I'm currently enrolled in the MPH dual degree program, and I must say it was also very helpful in selecting which school I would eventually come to, because I had a really tough time trying to decide. When you have really good offers, you have a hard time deciding, and it was very helpful. I recommend that everyone who is applying to schools of public health or to graduate school generally in the United States should definitely follow Dr. Banda on his LinkedIn, his YouTube, follow him everywhere, and you can be rest assured that he's always ready to answer your questions and attend to your concerns. You don't even have to necessarily always speak with him. Just by following his pages and following up with the activities, you definitely are on a good path. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Cornelius Nomeshi. I'm a medical doctor from Ghana. I completed my MPA degree at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health this past summer. Last year, during my application process, I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Banda Khalifa, who is a friend and a senior colleague. Dr. Banda's knowledge and experience of the graduate application process made it easier to write an outstanding personal statement, also aim for the right test course and finding the right people to write recommendation letters for me. He also gave me a really good insight about the funding landscape available for me for my education. I was able to get admission into most of the top schools that I applied for, including Johns Hopkins, Columbia University, Boston University, and then Harvard University. Yeah, so if you are actually looking to advance your studies and you're looking for a good and friendly coach, I'll recommend no other person than Dr. Banda.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Banda Khalifa, PhD. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for keeping you waiting. We had little technical challenges, but I'm glad that we are finally on. So today we are going to talk about a very critical element of the graduate school application process, and also delve into some of the challenges that we are currently facing in global health. So welcome to the Scholars Table. I'm your host, Dr. Banda Khalifa. Today we are honored to introduce Professor Linnea Zimmerman, who is a faculty here at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. She's an expert in family planning and women's reproductive health. She's deeply passionate about global health and has spearheaded significant research in maternal and newborn health interventions, especially in Africa, Ethiopia. She joins us today to shed some light on the graduate school application process. So the idea is that I plan to bring admission decision makers, or those who know how the process worked from each department, to share valuable insights about their specific application process. So without wasting much time, I know I've kept you waiting for far too long. Let me invite Professor Zimmerman into our screen. Professor, good afternoon. Glad to have you.
And I'm so the delay is very much on my fault, everyone. So not on Banda's fault. So I sincerely apologize for getting the time a little bit confused.
Yeah, no problem at all. I think the most important thing is that we still have you on the platform, so at least we would. It's worth the wait. It's worth the wait.
I hope so. I'll try and make it worth the wait for sure.
Yes, it's worth. I know it will be worth it. So before we start, we go into the academic area. Would you take some moment to introduce yourself for some of the guests, for some of the audience who don't really know what you do? Maybe introduce yourself and how you became so passionate about public health or global health in general.
Sure. So as Banda said, my name is Linnea Zimmerman. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Population, Family, and Reproductive Health here at Johns Hopkins. And my specific specialty is really in survey measurement. I work on a number of projects that generate nationally representative estimates for different kinds of women's sexual and reproductive health and maternal health indicators. So for example, family planning use, maternal mortality, use of services, etc. And most of my experience has been in Africa specifically, and particularly in some areas that are affected by conflict and humanitarian emergencies. And I became interested in public health and global health specifically. I think, there isn't really a time that I can think of that I didn't want to do it. I didn't necessarily know what public health was. I didn't necessarily know what global health was, but I have always wanted to work in a global space. I always wanted to see the world and learn from different people and learn how the world works. So I think, like many people, I thought I was going to go to medical school. I learned about what public health was, and that really spoke to me, just at a more at a deeper level than the clinical medicine. Nothing wrong with clinical medicine, but that just wasn't for me. So after I graduated from school, I just learned more about the field and followed my interests and passions into where I am now.
Wow, that looks like the usual story you hear about people not having the typical linear path in their academic trajectories. But what could you walk us through some of the current projects you're doing? If you have any project going on in Africa, what specific projects are those?
Sure. So the main project that I've worked on for about the past 10 years now, it's called Performance Monitoring for Action. So PMA. PMA surveys, also known as PMA 2020 surveys. They're in about 10 different countries. And we partner with ministries of health and local, either academic institutions or research institutions, to conduct, like I said before, sort of nationally representative samples of to understand health behavior. And the one that I'm particularly most invested in and the PI of is PMA Ethiopia, where we work with Addis Ababa University and the Ministry of Health, and are really working with them closely to monitor some of the key indicators and interventions that the Ministry of Health is trying to improve access to in the country.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is the reason why you're very passionate about public health education, especially in Africa and other developing countries. So with your involvement with the application process, I know like the statement of purpose is usually what most faculty will say it's critical. But in your opinion, what makes a statement of purpose like truly stand out? If you're reading a statement of purpose, what elements would you consider to be very compelling?
Yeah. So I think and again, every department is a little bit different, but I think
Yeah.
probably my advice that I'm about to give, I would say, is probably pretty universal. So I think it's really about explaining in a little bit of detail how you got to where you are now. But really, the statement of focus statement of purpose should focus on where you want to go, why you need a PhD to get you where you want to go. And really important is why you need a PhD from this specific department at this specific school to get you there. We see tons and tons of applications
Yeah.
that are not clear about why a PhD is needed. And more importantly, it's not clear why you want to come to this department. What are the skills you want, or the faculty you want to work with, or the experiences that you want to have with those faculty specifically that will get you where you want to go?
That's that seems like very it's concise, but it's also deep in the sense that if you're unable to convince the admissions committee why you need a PhD now and from this department, it becomes more like you're not ready. You're not really ready to pursue a PhD program. But I want us to explore. So in your department, typically, like how many applications do you have, and how many students do you accept? I know usually, so for the EP department, hundreds of applicants, but eventually only 2 or 3 slots are available. But how is your department like?
Yeah, so I think the way that it works is as students apply, it's kind of filtered through a number of steps. And so the first step is the school level. They assess the completeness of applications and if people have the requisite skills or degrees to kind of move forward. And they
Mm-hmm.
will screen out applications before they even make it to the department. So I have no idea how many those are. I assume hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually there will be about, I would say, to the second stage where it's getting to the department, we would probably have between 80 to 90 applications each year, and we accept 5. Yeah, it's really, it's really competitive. There are
Yeah.
5
Yeah.
spots every year.
Every year.
It
Wow.
might change a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
I know we're going to talk a little bit more about financial aid and
Yeah.
implications
Yeah.
later. But for the past few years, it's been 5, and it's probably going to stay at a similar size.
Wow. That shows how competitive it is. I tell people that if you're applying to um if you apply to graduate school, and it's at the master's level, the level of competition is way lower than applying to a PhD, because the slots are very, very small. Um,
Yes.
so, uh, usually some especially in the field of public health, people usually come in with achievements and work experiences. How do or how can students strike a balance between, for example, the achievement from their previous work and then also being able to clearly state their future ambitions in their statement of purpose?
Yeah, that's such a tough question. I wish I could give students like spend 25% on this and 50% on this. But it's obviously not quite that easy. I
Mm-hmm.
think what's really important is one, if you do want to showcase your past achievements in the sense that you want to explain where you are now. And what I mean by that is you've gotten to a point where a PhD is necessary for you. You've
Mm-hmm.
gotten to a point where you have reached a fork in the road and a PhD is where you want to go next. So, what are the experiences that got you there? How has it gotten you to where you are? And you really want to focus on the formative experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to know about your last 10 years of work that had nothing to do with why you suddenly want to change fields or get this new degree. You really need to focus on like what's the formative piece that's demonstrating to you that you don't have the skills that you need and you need to come to this program to get them. So don't ignore them, don't ignore your past experiences, but also really focus on what is most relevant for what you want to do moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in essence, you spend less time talking about uh, experiences that truly does not contribute to your passion for the field, and then focus on the essentials. Um, I know you've probably reviewed a couple of or several SOPs in the past. Uh, are there any common pitfalls you've identified that applicants typically, fall into? Are there any common traps that or mistakes that you've seen? Um,
Definitely. Definitely. So the number one pitfall is that I have seen personally is oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes students have an anomaly, like they failed a class or there's a year or two gap in their CV. Um, there's just something that is, you can have a stellar application and then there's a big black mark on it. The statement of purpose is the time to address it. Don't ignore
mhm,
it because we see it. It's not
mhm.
sneaking past us. So use the statement of purpose to say, I had a really hard time this year, this academic year. I changed schools. I had mental health problems. I was taking care of a relative, whatever it is. Explain what it is and explain why it's not going to affect you moving forward. Or maybe it's what informed your whole trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't explain it and we see it and we don't know why it's there, we can't dismiss it. And so
Yeah.
that's often, I think, one of the biggest pitfalls that I see in statements of purpose.
Okay. So in essence, if you have any questionable mark or anything that you think is worth clarifying, it's in your statement of purpose that you have to indicate. Yeah, I think that's fair. So I mean, we've talked about statement of purpose. I think another thing that also comes into focus is recommendation letters. So if you have two recommendation letters that you're reviewing, what qualities or aspect should recommendation letters emphasize, especially at the level of a doctoral program?
So there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is the way that we review applications now. We tend not to look at test scores, and so when we're looking at the application, what we're evaluating is the transcript, the statement of purpose, references, and experience. And for many students, especially international students, the the grading tends to be stricter than in the US. And so we might see transcripts that have C's or B's that in the US somebody would have gotten an A. We have a lot of grade inflation in the US.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you've seen it. So that's hard for us. That's hard for academic admissions committees to reconcile. So make sure that if you have B's or C's on your transcripts, you have references that are really speaking to your academic skills and how strong your academic skills are. We want to know that you are capable of conducting independent research. So have references speak to your ability to problem solve, to work independently, to think creatively about the topics that you're interested in. And are there any examples of leadership that they can point out? Those are all things that are really important for reference letters.
Okay, I think you brought up something that is quite interesting, and it's really true. There are some departments or some courses in Ghana where that's it's literally impossible for you to get an A, right? I know, like, as some of the faculty would feel that if they give you an A, it means the course is easy, and they don't want it to appear that way. So it's very prevalent. It's very prevalent in our educational system. So that, in essence, puts us in a disadvantaged position. And another thing that also puts international students at a disadvantage is the ability to publish. Right. So you could go through your whole master's degree or like go through medical school, master's degree, you have your master's without any publication. How does publication play a role in the admission process? How do you assess a candidate who has a publication and someone who doesn't have a publication? And the person without a publication is truly not because he isn't capable, but because opportunities were not there.
Yeah, so publications are critical. But I will, and you do highlight that there's usually a gap, an opportunity. I would say that we have, if we're looking at students who have recent master's degrees, even if they're from the US, very few of them publish as well. So it's more the students that have some work experience, where we would really hope to see that work experience has resulted in at least one publication. It does not have to be a first author publication. If
Okay.
it is, fantastic, that's great. But if it's not, that's okay. Again, you can use your statement of purpose to say how you contributed to it, the skills that you want to gain, how you intend to further that work. But do as much as you can to be on papers and attend conferences, present at
Mm-hmm.
conferences. That's also really important.
Okay.
And again, if you're not first author, that's okay. Just demonstrate that you're making the commitment to research and that you have been doing that to keep moving forward.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, and I've met a couple of people who have been working in industry for a while, and now they want to transition back to academia or get a PhD. So for such people, what kind of recommendations you think would suffice? Should they that's recommendation from um professional experience or industry reflect or have the same weight like someone who has recommendation letters from, for example, a previous master's degree where he's been in academia doing research and all that?
Yeah. You know, in a perfect world, the recommendations you're getting are from the leaders in your field. But most of us don't have access to the leaders of our field, right? Like very few of us do.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you want to do is select references who, again, I touched on it before, can really speak to your independence, your intellectual curiosity, um, and maybe you can provide some examples for some of these references about specific projects where you've demonstrated leadership, even if it's not perfectly related to where you want to go. Make sure you can really identify references who can speak to your skills on a personal level. It's not bad to have an academic reference from relatively recently, but I wouldn't recommend having one for the sake of having one. If you haven't been in school for 10 years and you're asking for a recommendation from a master's instructor from 10 years ago, that's not as influential to me as somebody who you have worked with closely and who can really speak to the kinds of independence and intellectual curiosity that's really critical for a PhD.
Okay, okay. So in essence, it doesn't matter much whether your references are from academic setting or from a professional setting, uh, depending on how long you've been out of academia or in the academic setting. Okay.
Yeah.
So another crucial thing that I keep getting questions from is that most international students feel when they reach out to their recommenders, usually they don't get a positive response, or they don't. Most recommenders don't know exactly what is required. But
Mm.
in your experience, how can students who are seeking out recommendation letters best prepare their recommenders to write impactful letters on their behalf?
You can write them yourself. And that I mean, you know what the skills that or the highlight you know what will make a good match with each of the programs that you're applying to. So if it's our department, we really value quantitative research skills. We really value, again, intellectual curiosity. And so reach out to your references and provide them with a couple of bullet points that say,
Mm-hmm.
these are the specific skills I would like you to highlight. Here are some examples of when I worked with you or when I was in your class where I demonstrated these skills. Don't draft the entire letter yourself, because if we get 3 references that clearly were written by the same person, that can be a little problematic. But you can certainly reach out to your references and say, I've prepared an outline, these are some examples, and these are the specific skills or qualities that I would hope you'd be able to highlight. And one other thing, and this goes back to the difference in grades, there's also a big difference in what being good versus what being excellent
Mm-hmm.
means. And I would venture that for many international students, if you were to get a reference from a person that said good, it would be great. It would be a great recommendation. the US, good is not excellent. We want excellent. So ask them, again, prepare them with the examples of when you have been excellent,
Yeah.
and try to advocate for yourself and ask them, if you think that I've been in one of the top students, can you select excellent or use words like excellent. It's really hard, and we recognize when we're reviewing applications that, again, international students sometimes have a disadvantage there. And so we recognize that, but try to have your letters really speak strongly about your credentials so that we can overcome that checkbox that says good, and see that they really, it's a US excellent.
Yeah, I like the way like you seem to understand the academic environment in Africa. That is exactly how it is. Good is equivalent to excellent, and uh, sometimes I mean I go through courses, get an A, and I'm like, how did I get an A? Right? Because elsewhere it's so difficult to to make that happen. So one other requirement for the application process is resumes or CVs. Um, like so, I know the resume for a job application is an entirely different format. Are there any specific requirement for a resume uh, in terms of the formatting or the structure or the number of pages when one is applying to a graduate school as opposed to a resume for an industry job?
I don't know that there's necessarily any guidance on length, but I would say that you really do want to specifically highlight publications. If you have them, make sure you have publications, and make sure that you have conference presentations. So you
Hmm.
might not normally have those for a resume for a job, but you definitely want them for an academic application.
Yeah,
And you want to make sure it's very easy to read. We see lots of applications. Anything that's really cluttered, has a
yeah,
lot of fonts, different fonts and underlines and bold, like just keep it very simple and easy to read. And there's, when you apply, you have your CV that you upload, but you also have sections of the application where you have to put in your work history
yeah.
and how you've worked there and what you've done. Make sure that those match. Some
Okay.
people will just look at the CV. Some people will just look at the boxes. Some people will look at both and be
Mm-hmm.
very, very detailed about, like, wow, do those align? That shows attention to detail or not. So you just want to make sure it's completely consistent, because what people take from one section versus the other might not always be the same.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very important point. Um, yeah. So I think you've answered my next question about what specific uh, uh, sections you think are very important. So for someone applying to a PhD, you definitely would have to get a section on publications or poster or abstract or conference presentations if you have any. Um, but if you don't have, what other what how would you be able to uh, demonstrate your ability to, for example, write, or your ability to do research if you don't have like a formal um, publication? Or let me say, if you have like if you have a manuscript in progress or you've submitted a manuscript, how would you capture that in your resume?
If you have a manuscript that's been submitted, put that on your CV. Say where it's been submitted to, and if it's under review, add that to your CV. If you have something that's in progress, you can put that in and say in progress. You can attach it. You can add a writing sample. And I think for particularly since we're looking less at GRE scores now,
Mm-hmm.
having writing samples is really important, particularly for students who are coming from an area where English may not be their first language. So we really do want to make sure that students can have the writing skills to succeed in the program. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with including an additional writing sample. Um, and then again, in your statement of purpose, maybe you haven't been listed as a writer, as a contributor to a paper, but what have you done that helped move that research forward? Did you interview the people? Did you do the data analysis? Did you help with the research protocol? You can highlight that as the relevant experiences you've had that brought you to this point. And now you want to move forward. Now you want your name on that manuscript.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think those are useful strategies. At least if you don't have a publication and you have one in progress, I tell people if you have some in progress, some that you've submitted, you have to
Yes.
include all of that in on your resume.
I didn't have one. I had no publications when I came in. So, you can sell yourself. Don't be afraid to sell yourself. And if you've submitted abstracts to conferences, even if it wasn't accepted, just you can put in the things that you have submitted and tried to move forward because it shows your commitment.
So okay, so in recent times, have you admitted anybody who did not have any publication at all in your department?
The only reason I hesitate is that I don't remember everyone's applications off the top of my head, but I am sure that we have. Yes. Like, can I say with specific, like last year
Uh-huh.
last year we accepted 2 of 5 or something? No, but I am sure that we have certainly accepted students every year that don't necessarily have a publication history.
Yeah, because I quite often have people reach out and uh, I mean like people from developing countries that they don't have a publication, so they are discouraged to apply.
Mm-hmm.
So to those people, you still encourage them to apply and try and highlight their strength in other areas.
Yes. And can you turn what you've worked on into a blog? Can you turn it into anything else? A letter to the editor, a research note, anything that can demonstrate that you are trying to move from thinking about research to actually doing and disseminating. And so there,
Hmm.
maybe you didn't write a paper, but maybe you can work with the author on the blog post or the dissemination strategy or the policy brief or the 2-page research brief that might accompany the article. There's other ways that there's other products than just manuscripts that perhaps you can work on.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so if you just join us, we are live on the Scholars Table. We had a small issue initially, but I'm glad that Professor Zimmerman agreed to stay on. So we are thankful to her. We currently have over 50 people watching us from LinkedIn, and then almost 10 on YouTube. We have a couple of questions, but before we dive into those questions, I want us to look at funding issues.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether the department, like the entire Bloomberg School, what I heard is that the entire Bloomberg School have a different funding mechanism depending on the department that you are admitted to. So for international students who are applying to your department, how is the funding structure like? Because the truth is that without scholarships, it's almost impossible to enroll in a PhD program.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's it's a long time and it's a lot of work, and you don't need to be working on top of that. So I checked with our PhD coordinators because I wanted to make sure I was accurate in what I said. So first, there are many international students who have access to like awards to study in the US or in other countries. You have scholarships, and so the school will honor most of those outside scholarships. But separate from that, in the Department of Population, Family, and Reproductive Health, of the 5 students that are accepted, all of them are offered the same financial package if you are accepted.
Okay.
And for currently, that financial package is full tuition, a stipend for the first 2 years, and health insurance. So, it's 4 years of funding. So 4 years of funding, 2 years of stipend. So your first 2 years, you get additional funds, and health insurance. And that is regardless of citizenship status. If you are accepted into the program, all PhD students will have that package. That package may change a little bit in the future, hopefully towards more support, not less support. So I can't say that will always be the case, but at least for right now, if you are accepted, that is the financial package, regardless of your citizenship status.
So what happens in your 3rd year and 4th year?
Right. Great question. Well, you don't have the stipend, but you do have still the tuition. And most of the students in their 3rd and 4th year, so in your first 2 years in the department, you're taking classes. You don't really have the opportunity. You can work on top of that, and many students do TA or have research assistantships. In the 3rd and 4th year, most students are not taking classes. They're working on their dissertation proposal and their dissertation. And the sort of higher level students, all of them have research assistantships. Many of them have consultancies, and they all TA. And so it's an opportunity, and that's not that we're forcing them to do that. That's your opportunity to get the experiences that you came for. You can learn a lot in class, but it's only when you start doing the work that you really learn anything. And that's the 3rd and the 4th year, and you actually get paid to do it.
Yeah. So yeah. I think it's mostly the same for most of the departments. In your 3rd and 4th year, they tell you they will find a way for you to be able to get your stipend, even if it's not guaranteed. All right, so I think we can take some questions on LinkedIn, and then we'll move on to our next section. So I have a question from, first of all, most of the comments are thanking you, their compliments, thanking you for being on the program. Okay, so we have a program from George Opoku, I guess from Ghana. He says, is it necessary to get evaluation of your transcript to show equivalence to the US standard?
It's not necessary. If you can do that, you certainly could submit that as well. It's not necessary. And most of the time, when we look at the transcripts, I would say most of us probably don't look to see if there's an additional equivalency addendum. I think, again, the key would be the things that really stand out are D's and F's. So anything that's a D and an F, that's pretty much a D and an F anywhere.
Yes.
So if you have something like that, that's when you really need to just address it on your transcript. And otherwise, again, try and emphasize in your references that you are very academically capable and able to undertake the program.
Okay. All right. I have a question from James McCormick from Nairobi. Says, thank you for the information. If a candidate has a completion letter waiting for graduation, can they apply? I guess. Okay. The same person wants to know whether grades matter when enrolling a PhD. I should think so. So he says, what if somebody scores grade C, would he be allowed to join the program?
So there's no cutoff. So it's not as though if somebody has a C, we won't take anyone with a C. There's no specific cutoff. I think the issue is more that we've talked about. A C in the US is really bad. It's not average. It's not good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sorry to anybody who might have gotten a C. And so, for the US, we really want to see A's and B's. And so it can be a challenge, again, for students who are in a more demanding academic environment. So I think it's not that a C will keep you out. Ideally, that C is in perhaps a class that's not relevant. So maybe it's in, I don't want to insult an entire degree, but maybe it's in astrophysics or something, that's not perhaps relevant to public health.
Yes,
So
yes.
you don't need to worry quite as much if it's a tangential class. But you should apply. You should definitely apply. And we understand that those are differences. And again, there are opportunities within the statement of purpose, within your references, to really try and solidify that you are academically qualified. And that's also, I think, when the writing sample becomes more important. If you have worse grades in anything related to writing or composition, attach a writing sample that shows you are a capable and efficient writer.
Okay. I think that has been answered. Okay, somebody says, I learned recently that we are not meant to state our accomplishment in the SOP. The admissions committee already have our CV to speak on that. My question is, how do we then show we have what it takes to succeed in graduate school? I don't know where she got that from, but yeah, that's her question.
It's a really good question. Because I've heard similar things. So I would say you don't want to repeat your CV, in that you don't want to, in your statement of purpose, say, I was in this position, and then I was in this position, and then I was in this position, and then I won an award. That I can read from your CV.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, what did you learn in those positions? What about those positions? What are the skills that you gained? What are the experiences that you had? What did you learn when you were a research coordinator that led you to want to get a PhD? Or what was the experience you had as an HIV counselor that led you to transition from clinical care to public health? You should definitely speak to your accomplishments, but it needs to not be, I did this, I did this, I did this.
Yeah.
It needs to be why that has formed who you are.
Mm-hmm. So in essence, you have to tell a story. You don't want to be listing your accomplishments and I've seen SOPs that have tables and figures and all that. All right. Okay. So one other issue too is that I think we have a question from James as well. He wants to know that if you have a publication in a local newspaper, does it count, or it has to be a scientific journal?
Yeah.
I mean,
a scientific journal is stronger, sure, but if you have an article that you've written that was published in a local newspaper, put it on your CV. Is that going to, if you're competing against somebody who has a first author publication in the Lancet, is that the same thing? No. But is it showing that you have dedication to what you are interested in studying? You're interested in not just doing the research, but disseminating it? Then put that on your CV. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that's fair. When I was applying for my PhD, I had even though I had scientific publications, I had also written some articles to some prominent newspapers in Ghana, so I sneak them in. Um,
Mhm.
I think it doesn't hurt. So we have a question from Samira Isa. Okay, so I think this is about master's program. She's asking about opportunities for scholarships for master's program. I don't know if you have any info. What I know is that for School of Public Health, for MPH program, most of the time your application also serves as an application for scholarship. But
Mhm.
it depends on the evaluation. So those with stronger application are more likely to get scholarships than other folks. But I have the program manager for the MPH program will be joining us pretty soon, and he knows the ins and outs of the funding process. So stay tuned for that session. Samuel Dako wants to know that do candidates with leadership experience have higher chance of getting admission?
Um, I guess it depends on what you mean by leadership experience. One thing to also think about, and we haven't talked about it here. I don't know if you have a future episode, but there's also DRPH programs. So
Yeah.
there's
Mm-hmm.
PhD, which are very focused on research, and then there's DRPH, which is also a doctorate, but focuses more, I think, on the leadership and managerial aspects of a doctorate program. So if you're more interested in leading an organization like Pop Council or something, maybe a DRPH is a better fit than a PhD. But certainly in either application, you want to emphasize your leadership experience.
Yeah. 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 I think I had one faculty, Dr. Anna from International Health, to talk about the DRPH program, like really comparing DRPH and the PhD program. Yeah, so I think we've answered most of the questions. Let's move on and finish with our last session, and then if you have any additional questions, you can ask. So keep your questions coming in the comment section. So section 2 is about decolonizing global health. I know when COVID came, even before COVID, there were several instances where the public health space felt that if you are a public health professional in Africa or from a developing country, you are not treated the same as those in other continents. So I want, like, in your own words, how would you define what decolonizing global health is, and why do you think it's very important in today's context?
So first, I think that decolonizing development and decolonizing global health, it's really become in many ways a sort of catch-all term. And so I think everyone has their own idea of what it means. And so for me, what I think it means is decolonizing global health is allowing, and not even allowing, encouraging countries to identify their own health priorities and set their own research and program agendas to achieve the goals that they have defined as important, and providing the financial or administrative or technical support that's necessary, but making sure that it's led by and for the people who it is impacting. And I think it's imperative because, as you said, like COVID showed us a lot of things that maybe were under the surface, and one of those was making very stark the differences in, well, one, I think make very clearly showing that we aren't needed quite as much as maybe we thought we were. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are perfectly capable of taking care of themselves. but also showing, like you said, that there were really, really critical inequities in what people had access to. And having the global north set the priorities for the global south and say, you have to do this, it isn't working. COVID showed us that.
All right. So what are some of the challenges that you see in this concept, especially when it comes to education and research on the continent?
So I think for me, what I see as it relates to education and research is, I think that the colonial legacy was one where education was largely not invested in. It didn't benefit colonial powers to have strong education systems. And so when, that legacy ended, such as it has, it left countries to sort of, in many ways, start an education system from the ground up and build it. And, there's a lot of talent and there's a lot of expertise, but then there's also been those people who have that expertise, who have that talent, are being pulled to teach, to do research, to advise the Ministry of Health, to lead programs, to do everything. And it really, it leaves sort of a gap in, can you advise your own PhD students when you're also leading a program and also advising the Ministry of Health? I think the challenge is making sure that the academic systems are really set up that they can move forward and train the future generation of researchers within the countries.
Great. So for professionals who are coming up, what steps can students take to be more aware of this challenge, especially in biases and in line of practice for their work? I quite remember there was an incident where there was a global health summit in one of the European countries, and heads of public health institutions from Africa were turned away because of visa issues or something like that. So the question is that if you're going to turn heads of public health away from your program, why then do you organize such programs in a place where it's extremely difficult to get into?
Yeah. Sorry, there's a siren going by. I don't know if you can hear.
Yeah, can you hear it?
Just wait one moment. I live on a very busy street. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised that's the first siren. What you just highlighted is just, it's so emblematic of the problem.
Yeah.
And I know for the International Conference on Family Planning that I helped organize, we were in Thailand and we had the same issues. People could not get visas, and it was very frustrating. So I can't speak to that, unfortunately. The administrative piece. For me, I think for students to think about, and I think this is true for decolonization. I think it's true for just about anything that you want to do professionally, is to really take the time to research and clarify for yourself what is already known and what is already being done. I think that the global north has not a great history of thinking that we have the first ones to identify the problem and have gone in with our set of solutions and not done enough to understand what is already being done and what the needs really are. And I think that means that you have to really engage with the communities to identify what priorities matter to them, what solutions work for them. You can take the frameworks and the theories and the methods that you're taught in class, but you have to bring them to the field and say what works and what doesn't, and be prepared to drop what doesn't work.
Yeah.
I wish I had a silver bullet or more insightful.
Yeah, it's such a difficult area to explore. And I truly hope things get much things get much better. So I think we've crossed the 1 hour mark. Thank you so much for being here with us. But before you go, any advice to prospective applicants and young professionals who are looking to join the field of public health?
Oh, don't be discouraged, I guess. There's so many things in the world right now that feel discouraging, I think. And we have to, nothing is going to get better unless, we're really dedicated to making it better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if you see a problem or an issue in your community, in your country, and you think that's what you want to address and you need a PhD to do it, that's the story you need to tell, and that's what will get you into our program.
Yeah.
And I hope that you all come. I hope to see anyone who listened in the halls next year.
Yeah.
And if people have questions and are interested in our program, you can please feel free to email me. Banda has my email, and if I can't answer it, I'd be happy to pass it on to the academic coordinators who can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making the time to share your insights with us. We truly appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get to do this again. We are very grateful. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks to all of you for being flexible and for giving me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate it too. Thank you so much. Bye. All right. So I'm really pleased that we're able to make this program happen. Initially, we had some technical challenges, but everything has been sorted out. And if you listened in, hopefully you've gained some insights about the application process. If you're applying to a PhD, the truth is that it's a tough journey. It's much difficult. It's much more difficult than applying to a master's program. So you have to be ready for the bad news. You have to prepare yourself. And as he said, it's a competition. Several people are applying for few slots. So you have to make sure whatever you're putting in is the strongest version of your application. Bashiru Muhammad, for a PhD admission, is it a must that you should have a publication? Yeah, I think she addressed this. It's good if you have a publication, right? It's good if you have a publication, but it's not it wouldn't kill your application completely, right? If you have a publication, that is a plus. But if you don't have a publication, you should still apply and highlight various ways that you can use to compensate that shortfall. And she highlighted that they've accepted candidates without publications before. So before you rule yourself out, apply and see how you would fare. So thank you all so much for joining us. This was a Scholars Table. As I said at the beginning of the program, the idea is to try and bring on admission committee members from each of the departments across Johns Hopkins, so that at least whichever program you're applying to, you know exactly what they're looking for, you know exactly the scholarships they offer, and you know exactly how to put together your application. Next week, we are going to have a very interesting program, and I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to have Dr. Danya Kato with us. She's been the program director for University of Maryland Pharmaceutical Health Services Research Program for almost 5 years, and that program is one of the most competitive programs in the US. So make time and join us next week so that would continue enlightening each other. So thank you for joining. Have a great weekend and see you next week. Bye bye.